Hi, y'all. This is Gabriel, the nutritionist here. I want to talk about mental health awareness. It's really important. I know I did it on purpose to wait this long because it's the end of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, right? But what a lot of people don't know, right, is this is actually going to be Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think it's really important to talk about men because not just the women too, and the men and the children and everyone, right? But men are very different from women. Women can cry and complain, and it's normal. That's fine. But the minute a man complains, cries, or, gives himself as vulnerable, right? He is seen as less than a man. He is unimportant. He loses respect from his friends, from his woman, from his children. So men must live as a myth, as a legend, to always be on top of their game without compromise. So men will always suffer in silence because that's the norm. But the whole point of what I'm doing here, right, is people who think they're happy should be healthy, right? And people who think they're healthy should be happy, right? But most often, right, if you're not either, the problem is probably going to be molds, right? From exposure from buildings that are water damaged, could be from food that happens, and that affects your your mental health, awareness, your psyche, and not just that, but the way you interact. We talk about toxic metals, lime, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, talk about monoamine oxidase inhibitors, alcohol, and drugs. And this affects everybody. I'm sure you've probably known yourself or other people who have noticed people have changed, and not in a good way. You always want to change for better or in a good way, not change into such a way where you're dilapidated. You're not who you were, you're not who you were supposed to be. You're a lesser form of who you should have been. So men who are suffering in silence, watch this video. Women that are concerned with their health and haven't gotten better, watch this video. I'm going to chop this up into different parts. First, we're going to start with mold. Mold is very slept on. It's a big issue, and you can test for it, so that's a beautiful thing, right? Let's move on. So here's the idea, right? You have a good job, which, the economy sucks, right? So if you have a good job, like God bless you, right? Kids are doing well. Some people have kids that are horrible, they're terrible, right? But if you have awesome kids, they're doing well in school, they're sweet, they're just, something to be proud of, you should be pretty happy. Your spouse is happy, right? You know, happy wife, happy life, well, vice versa, right? It makes the aura of living around that person even better. People see good vibrations, happy vibes, whatever have you, right? To be around a happy person is pretty infectious. Whereas being around a person who is angry, they're mean, they're sad, can also be vice versa, infectious too, not a good way. You eat healthy. Well, a lot of people, because I'm a nutritionist, I've helped people for many years. I've seen all sorts of diets people have been on, from vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, you name it, right? All the weird shit in between. A lot of people think they're being healthy when they're not healthy. That's a reality. Vegans are not healthy, vegetarians are not healthy. Some carnivores who eat a lot of liver and organs, they're not healthy. And I'm here to break that wall, right? Because people believe in everything a health guru influencer says online on the internet, right? The problem with a lot of influencers is they don't have clients. Why are you going to listen to someone who gives advice who hasn't refined his own advice? If you have clients, you give advice, if it doesn't work, you got to think hard, you got to go back, you got to turn around, you got to fix the problem. If you just say whatever on the internet with no clients, there is no accountability for you. You will fail as a practitioner, but we're in a new age where people have the power of influencers, and they have AG1 superfoods and all sorts of ads, right? You see these people, right, with over like 100,000 views, a million views, and they're getting paid from that. They're not getting paid by clients. So always be aware of where you get your information from, because some people may sound smart, and they're in fact, and I say this with all due respect, they can be pretty fucking retarded. And I'm sure some people think I'm pretty fucking retarded too, right? It's just the nature of having different conflicting ideas in the world of health. So if you think you're healthy, you're probably not healthy. That's my point. Be humble, have humility. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. And sometimes what we think is canon is actually false. So my point is to be full of humility, to be humble, because sometimes we're wrong even though we believe we're truly right. Your finances, you're doing well, right? You're making good money, you have a retirement, you could have some planned college fund for your kid, and they're going to do well, right? Even if you die, right? Maybe your spouse will still live well, right? So that's something to be grateful for. You own your own home, which is amazing, right? The market sucks right now. Boomers had it good back then with low interest rates, and they're able to, do better in the economy back then. Now it's impossible. It's hard, it's difficult, it's all being bought by BlackRock and being owned. So we're getting to the point, right, where the future is very futile and that most people are going to be renters, not by choice, because, things are getting harder. People want to own land and have a house and raise a big family, but the finances aren't there for everybody. So if you own your own home, amazing, congratulations. You'll be able to pass it down to your children and so on, right? It's a great thing. You should be very grateful for that. Another one is you exercise and you get sunlight. That's really good. Some people can't exercise, right? They're too busy working, they don't have enough time, they're always busy. So whether you exercise late at night or early in the morning, you know, that's awesome. You need that. The important part of exercise, right, is it helps strengthen your bones. It helps strengthen not just the bones, but your muscles, right? And I often tell people, right, if you're very sedentary, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's why people, when they get older, they get weak bones, right? They fall down, they break a hip, and they're fucked, right? That's the reality I've seen for a lot of people. But my point is, don't stop moving, because the minute you stop moving, your body becomes decrepit, regardless of how good your diet is. People always remark, why are there like these 90-year-old people, right? These old men, they're slim, they're kind of tallish, and they're walking and they're cognizant. Well, they never stop moving, so don't stop moving, right? Make sure you walk, make sure you exercise, but don't go too crazy, right? Just enough to not be lazy. Sunlight, you need sunlight. It's very important for your body. I'm sure you've heard of seasonal affective disorder. It's around the winter time when, it's very cloudy, there's not enough sun, and people start to feel sad, they feel depressed because, we need sunlight. Humans to an extent are, this bioenergetic being. So when you make sunlight, what happens when it hits your body? You got UVA, UVB. You actually take your own cholesterol, right? If you have high cholesterol and that's your worry, you take that cholesterol and you make vitamin D from it. Amazing, right? Vitamin D supplements, well, you take too much, you could have, calcium problems, right? Hypercalcemia, not a good thing. At least in your body, right? When you get sunlight, you have lumisterol, you have tachysterol, and you can store some of the vitamin D for later. And also at the same time, you regulate your melatonin, so your sleep will be even better. So get sunlight every day if you can. I'll talk more about it later, but just for the gist. Regardless, if you have all these things or at least two of these things, you should be happy. You should be grateful. You have a better life than most people around the world, but you're still not happy. You should be going on, right? If you're more fortunate, right? You go on vacations, right? You go to, I don't know, Italy, you go to Cancun, or, you go around the world, right? Some people never vacation, right? Let alone leave to go to another state. So if you go on vacations, you're pretty fucking fortunate. You drive your dream car, right? Some people save up. They buy their Porsche, Corvette, Ferrari, whatever, right? Some people just have a Toyota, right? So another thing to be grateful for is you have so much money, you can spend it on bullshit. So again, congratulations, good for you, but you're still not happy. Well, people say money can't buy you happiness. That's kind of true, but I see a pretty comfy life and, financial security. You hang out with your friends. This is very important, and I talk about it a lot, right? And I'm gonna combine this with spending time with your family. There's something we've lost since the 1950s. It's called the civic cohesion, right? Where people used to go out to public gatherings, hang out with each other, talk, converse. Because again, humans are social creatures. No one ever developed by themselves as a hermit. We've always been community, small tribes, into towns, into cities, states, then nations, then you get the world, right? So out of that, right, comes the bonding, right? There's something called oxytocin. You ever spend time at work with someone you hate, but over time you get to like them? Well, that's oxytocin working, right? You spend time with people, you get to know them, you shake hands with them, you hug them, maybe you kiss them and you fall in love. But the whole point being, right, is there's all this dopamine addictions going on, right? All this serotonin drugs going on. But no one ever talks about oxytocin, the love hormone, the bonding hormone. We need more of that. There's some people that don't have any friends, don't have any family, they're just kind of alone. I know it's hard for you, right? But go make friends. Go marry someone and join their family. Do something to become social. Join, you know, a bowling league, right? Join a church. Do something to meet people. Because even on days where you don't want to leave the house and be social, if you do it anyway, you'll be more than happy that you left the house. That's the reality. We're not hermits. We're not introverts. Humans are pretty extroverted, given the circumstances and the chance. So do that. But, right? If you do this and you're still not happy, well, that's a problem, and we'll talk about that later. You're there for your kids, you can provide for them, you're giving them college, you're giving them private school, whatever, right? You've done so much for them other people can't do for their kids, right? So you should be pretty happy and proud, but you're still not happy. You have an amazing spouse, maybe she's gorgeous, right? Maybe he's amazing. Maybe they're the dream ideal person, right? But you're still not happy. You have peace in your life, nothing to worry about, but you're still not happy. Peace is the ultimate price, no drama, no problems, nothing, right? Even if you're not a very fortunate person, right? And you're living on, basic necessities, right? Out of your temerity to do decent enough for yourself, right? Peace is pretty powerful. It's amazing. It's awesome. And if you're not happy, then there's a problem. So my point being, right? You have all these reasons to be happy, to be grateful, to smile, to feel something. If you don't, you do in fact have a problem. So let's talk about it. You've tried sunlight. I talked about sunlight helps you, but because of the seed oils, you're gonna get sunburned, you're gonna have inflammation. Seed oils have 4-HNE, myelinaldehyde, acrolein. These things are toxic to not just your body, but your liver, and you got to process it. And in turn, it could affect your mental health. Low carb diets, they're great, they're amazing. I love them, whether you're keto, whether you're almost a carnivore, no organ meats, whether you're just, low carb, right? This should help you out. But that doesn't work. We'll talk about later about why it doesn't help. Multivitamins, a lot of them are crappy, they're synthetic, they're shitty, they're not the best. They're the cheapest things your body can't really absorb. And in my own opinion, I think your body spends way more time trying to detox out all these synthetic vitamins as opposed to the real vitamins. And that's probably putting strain on your liver. A strained liver is angry. So some people that are emotionally reactive could have a troubled liver. Detoxes. There is a way to detox. It's not going to be a little green juice cleanse. It's not going to be a lemon juice cleanse. It's not going to be cayenne pepper. It's going to be none of that bullshit. That stuff doesn't work. Sure, you get bile out of your body, which is good. It's great. But at the same time, you shut down your body's ability to produce, quality bile to be toxed out. So yeah, if you're doing any of those things, don't do them. You're doing more harm than good. The green stuff, it's an oxalate bomb. It's going to fuck you up. Carrot juice, that's going to fuck you up too. So don't do any of that. You're just making the problem worse. Because again, right, there's something called plant defense chemical compounds, or are called secondary plant metabolites, and we're not meant to have any of that. You do that, it fucks you up. Look it up. I don't care what people say. It's good. It's not. In reality, I've seen clients, they've done this, they hurt themselves, and, they learned to not touch the stove because it was hot. And some people learn the hard way. Health fads. I just put that out there because people do a little bit of everything and nothing works, right? Well, at some point, I think we'll break down through the health fads and find out what will work. You've done magnesium, right? And you still don't feel good. You're probably not getting enough. Magnesium pills are garbage. You can't absorb most of it. I don't care if it's magtine. I don't care if it's glycinate, malate, taurate, whatever, right? I don't care if it's that one expensive one that has like all of them combined. It does not compare in comparison to doing a blood test or a hair tissue mineral analysis on a person who does topical magnesium chloride, a liposomal version, you rub your skin, you do good enough, a lotion, right? That works like a million times better. It makes a big difference. I recommend doing that. Thiamine. Thiamin's good. It's great. It helps people. Most people are deficient. If you're high carb, alcoholic, very stressed, depressed, anxiety, always going, drinking a lot of coffee, you need thiamine. And I think for a lot of people, we lack a sufficient amount of thiamine to make a meaningful change to the body to impact mental health. So again, right, vitamin B1 has thiamine hydrochloride. You could do a benfotiamine, mix and match. There's something called Thiamax. Great product. Try it out. See how you feel. When it comes to megadosing, I don't believe in megadosing. I think it can cause more harm than good, but that's my opinion. Always say when you take any supplement, you start out slowly because it could fuck you up. And the whole point is to not fuck you up. It's to feel better and to do better long term. Animal protein, people often talk about how plant proteins are amazing and they're the best. If you're starving, why not, right? But we live, in a modern world where we live in excess. You get whatever you want. So eat animal protein. Animal protein is, and I will always argue, is the best kind of protein to get. Animal protein is a complete protein. It has all your amino acids, essential and not essential. Essential meaning you can't make it in your body. Not essential meaning you could do conversions and you could take from others and make other ones. The whole point being, right, is you want complete protein because you're getting everything you need. Amino acids are responsible for a lot of things in your body, right? Thousands upon thousands. I'm sure there's more we haven't figured out yet, right? For muscles, for neurotransmitters, for hormones, enzymes. I mean, you know, why cheat your body out of this by doing plant protein bullshit? If you're religious, you're doing, buckwheat and tempeh and quinoa, whatever, sure, go for it, right? But if you're not religious, you don't need to do plant-based protein, eat steak, eat bison, eat lamb. That's maybe the best thing for you. A lot of people that are kind of depressed, they're very plant-based, you know? I'm not throwing shade because in reality, when you look at the nutrients, look at the profiles of the amino acids, you need neurotransmitters and they come from amino acids. So eat more animal protein. Whether it's fatty or lean, I don't care. Just get more of that into your body. That'll make a difference. Now, seed oils, let's talk about 4-HNE, malondialdehyde, acrolein. This stuff is very oxidized. It will damage your body. We never had this in nature. We never had seed oils in nature. We never had this much omega-6 ever in our lives. This is a very recent thing. Seed oils were made for engine lubricants. Why we're consuming this is retarded. It could come with all sorts of theories, but it's not a good thing for you. And people who do a lot of seed oils, once they stop, they do tallow, coconut oil, a healthy fat. They get to the point where they can actually go into the sun, they get a nice tan, they stop burning, and they feel better. And also, seed oils have a lot of problems like, getting gassy, right? Really rancid farts. Some people it messes up with the lipid profile that makes up their skin cells. So that's probably why when you go out to the beach and you're in a Central American diet, you cook with canola, all that crass oil, and you sunburn, you look like a lobster and your skin's peeling, right? The sun isn't killing you, right? The sun is oxidizing the crap that's in your skin. So essentially, you're cooking yourself with seed oils because it's a very unstable bond. Saturated fats, they're a very stable bond. They're very strong. They're together. And it's not so easy to unstabilize them, right? That's kind of the whole point of why when you do high temperature cooking, you use a saturated fat. So let's say you've done all this, right? And for the record, right, if you haven't done any of this, do this first. Do it first. All this together in some way is going to help you become happier, healthier as you start healing your mental health. Because again, right, you need the building blocks to make the neurotransmitters, to make the hormones. There's people out there that don't have any good quality neurotransmitters or hormones from, doing plant-based proteins. They're so stressed and overworked that they're not getting any magnesium in their body, no thiamine. So all this together is going to help you. For most people, it should work. But if you've done all this and it doesn't work, then this is the presentation for you, right? This is why you're here. This is why you're watching this. You're still unhappy. And it sucks, right? Because you have no energy to live life. You will get chronic fatigue, or maybe you don't want to get out of bed. How are you supposed to make happy moments if you don't get out of bed, right? Now libido for pleasure, right? I mean, people love to fuck, right? It's amazing. It's awesome. It's the best thing in life, right? Be careful. Wear a condom. Don't do birth control. Watch one of my other videos. Bad for you. No thoughts to bring to life. You know, how are you supposed to make something out of yourself if you don't want to plan for your life, if you don't want to think about tomorrow, right? You're just struggling for today, right? It sucks. I understand. I get it. So this is why we're here. This is why we're going to learn how to deal with this. No excitement to build anything, your future, your legacy, your kids, moving up in the world, doing your best, getting a higher education to get the job you want because stupid requirements. You got to do that, right? So, if this is you, you're actually unhealthy. Because you're unhealthy, you're not happy. If you think you're if you're healthy, you weren't ever healthy in the first place. I'm sorry to tell you. I'm very sorry to break the news to you. You were not healthy. But maybe you were, and I'll tell you why later on. Some other things were messing you up the entire time and you had no idea about. All right, so at least there's that. This is why you might have anxiety, depression, or you're unhappy. So here's the thing, we got to test for things, right? You go to your doctor, and even some of the best functional doctors don't even do these tests, right? You got to test for toxic mold, right? It could be in your food, if you're in a water damaged apartment, housing, building, terrible ventilation, whatever, right? You could be having ochratoxin A, zearalenone, tetrodotoxin, mycophenolic acid, all these things, and it's affecting your gut. And this thing is so strong and potent, regardless of what healthy things you do, it's just fucking you up the whole time. And you probably had no idea, and that sucks. Because if you knew about this early on in your life, you could have dealt with it instead of struggle for years. Same thing, toxic metals, lead, mercury, etc. That can mess you up mentally and affect you profoundly. Lyme, Lyme's very different. You may have a low-grade infection, hopefully. Unfortunately, I mean, Lyme's a weird one because there's co-infections with Babesia and Bartonella and, all sorts of other things that could be affecting your mental health. But we're here for mold, video one. Let's talk about mold, right? So perhaps you're taking a shower, right? And it's enclosed bathroom. Maybe you don't have any ventilation. And you notice that there's black stuff forming all around, right? Well, that's the creation of mold in a place that has some heat, not too cold, right? Very humid. Humidity is what makes this happen. It's how they form. And these tiny black spots get you sick. So they have something called mycospores, right? It's these tiny little things inside, and they emit this mycotoxin. So you breathe it in, and it feels like allergies in the beginning, right? It could be post-nasal drip. That's basically how you first recognize you may have that, right? Whether or not it's this isn't for allergies or you're allergic to certain things, this sparks it up. So as you breathe in this stuff right over time, or eat it for whatever reason, you could have mold toxins, and you get brain inflammation. What happens is you have these cells called microglial cells in your brain. It's the immune cells for your brain. It repairs, forms more neurons, gets rid of old debris, dead cells. So you could have neuroinflammation from this. Your hypopituitary axis, right? Hypothalamus. There's a connection from the brain to the back of the kidneys, affecting your aldosterone, affecting your epinephrine, and apparently you get stress, very stressed, and a lot of cortisol. So despite not much going on, you can feel the weight of the world on you. Or on top of already having the weight of the world on you by, being a parent, by living, by working, just being a normal human being with your responsibilities, right? You feel just the weight of the world crushing on you. You're more stressed than usual despite your stress, right? You lose your tolerance for stress. That's basically what happens. And you can get moody, you get angry, you get sad, and it's just a part of having this sort of infection. Your neurotransmitters get disrupted, right? Yeah, serotonin keeps you balanced. Dopamine keeps you happy, right? It's like your own high five when you complete an achievement, you do something great. You have GABA, gamma amino butyric acid. That keeps you chill, keeps you happy, You have a lot of it before bed, so it keeps you relaxed. That's what it does. And glutamate, because you need glutamate for a lot of things in the body, especially your mental health. But too much of it, like MSG, could mess you up. But that's a different story for a different day. And you could have mitochondria dysfunction, right? So you have these, I'm sure you learned in school, the powerhouse of the cell, ATP, your body makes energy that powers you up. This could, in some places, mess with your complex 1, 2, 3, 4. of your mitochondria, which is the process of making energy. So you could lose energy, you feel much more tired, and you have less motivation. And you could have leaky brain, right? You've got so much inflammation, the blood-brain barrier, the vessels, they have this permeability, and things go in and out when they shouldn't. So those are different problems that could happen. There's different kinds of mold, a lot of them actually. Well, let me go back to the top, right? So mold won't always be black, right? It could be white, like on peanuts, like on grains. It could be blue-green, like algae, in a murky pool, or maybe, in your AC. Clean that, please. Could be yellow. They come in different colors. That's my point, right? It's not always going to be this pretty black mold, which is spot on, right? You look at it and you're like, yep, that's it. But please be aware that's not always the case. They can also be very microscopic, hiding in food too, right? And it's going to be grains and spices, things that are dried and older. So in this case, always eat fresh, if this is you. So some of these home toxins, it's going to be aflatoxin, gliotoxin, ochratoxin A, zearalenone. So aflatoxins are carcinogenic, which means it could give you cancer. The neurotoxic, which means it messes you up neurally. And you have gliotoxin, which suppresses your immune response and damages neurons, right? So it affects how effective your microglial cells work. Ochratoxin A, that's the big one that disrupts your dopamine and serotonin. You have this metabolism, how your body makes these neurotransmitters, your amino acids. And eventually you get to the point where you have brain fog, you can't think, you can't focus, you got depression, so this is depression, right? Like actual depression. You just cannot feel happy no matter what, right? You can watch a funny TV show, hang out with friends, and you're just not happy. That's depression. It's not feeling pretty sad. It's a long-term thing. You don't have any moments. So when you have good moments and you think you're sad and you can laugh and you can enjoy something, if you had that glimmer, you're not depressed. But if you have no glimmers, you're just, doom and gloom, no glimmers, no actual anything to feel happy or to enjoy. That's depression. I want you to know that. Because you go to any doctor, they slap you on an SSRI and they're like, yeah, whatever, here, take this like it's candy. It's like, no, man, like you should actually diagnose a person and give them some shit if they need it, right? So know this. It's very important. If you have no glimmers, you're depressed. So symptoms, the brain fog, the depression. Now here's the thing, right? Emotional numbness. It's basically what depression is, right? You feel nothing. It's called apathy. You're just kind of zombified. You can't really feel anything. You can't really respond to things. It sucks. It's not a good feeling. I know it. Fatigue, you're always tired chronic fatigue. Again, you can't wake up. You don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to do things. The kind of lethargic behavior. That's it, right? Poor memory, again, right? Because you have this inflammation. You're not stimulated, right? You got no glimmers going on in your life. You're gonna have trouble with your memory and forming these connections, these neurons. At the same time, there's inflammation going on in your brain, affecting your glial cells, so that could be impacting your neurons in a different way too. Sleep disruption, some people can't go to sleep. It happens. If you're overthinking, you're overworking your brain, and you can't fall asleep that way, that could be a thiamine magnesium deficiency. You have a restless brain. If not that, you have insomnia just because you can't sleep and you're not thinking, then that's going to be attributed to this. So here's a funny one, right? Penicillin, right? It's good for you, right? It's an antibiotic. Well, the problem with ochratoxin A and these penicillins, right, is there's something called mycophenolic acid, right? So essentially, you have this antibiotic living inside of you. It's a mold, it's a fungus, and it kills any good bacteria in your body, right? So it kills your healthy bacteria. It causes lipopolysaccharides. It causes leaky gut. You get the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which happens in your small intestines, right? So here's the thing. Your small intestines should have no bacteria. It should be pretty clean, pretty, isolated, right? If you have problems with your bile, your gallbladder is removed, or your liver isn't producing, bile, maybe you have a stagnation, maybe you have cholestasis, right? Then you get SIBO, right? Which sucks. And you get yeast infections, right? Reoccurring yeast infections. So here's the thing. Sometimes people think their partner's cheating on them, because they get a yeast infection, right? That comes out of nowhere. Well, in this case, right, if you have mold, right, like I said, right, you have all this bacteria being killed off, the good and the bad. The good help keep down the fungus, the yeast infections. So if you have a lot of yeast infections, you're more likely exposed to this mold because there's something fighting down and keeping down the yeast. So I want you to know that. Lots of people are going to have recurring yeast infections. So if you have recurring yeast infections, then you probably have mold. And also, if you want to know if your doctor's retarded, he'll give you a fucking antibiotic as if it'll magically fix the yeast. It doesn't. But like it logically makes no sense because the yeast already has that property of the mycophenolic acid. But again, right, it depends on what strain you have. You could have multiple strains, you could have one or two strains. It depends. You get tested for that. So again, it's neurotoxic to your brain, nephrotoxic, damages your kidneys and your liver, I argue too. It can inhibit your mitochondrial function, which means your ability to produce energy. ATP is much more lower, and protein synthesis is lower, which you need protein synthesis to help you make amino acids, right? Different chains, peptides, all that kind of stuff for neurotransmitters to repair your body. Very important. So where does mold come from, right? Hot, humid areas, right? So we live along the coastline, right? Which I find really interesting is a lot of people have similar symptoms to that of Lyme disease and mold. If you live on the coastal areas, you're very humid, it could very well be some kind of mold infection, right? From a hurricane, from a storm, from bad ventilation. I often believe people need to have proper housing. If you live in a humid area, you should have a special dehumidifier for AC unit that gets rid of all the excess moisture because having too much of it can cause mold to grow in certain areas in your house, which sucks. You breathe it in, and you don't even know you're breathing in, right? That's the point. You gotta go find this stuff. So after you find this video, right, and you watch it, you want to go check your vents, your AC units, every nook and cranny with a flashlight and see if there's any of these spots. And if not, good, God bless you. But we want to make sure, so go buy an agar plate. They're on Amazon. They're very cheap. Put one in each room for a couple of hours, then put them away in a bag, and watch to see if they grow any mold. That's the ultimate test to see if you truly have mold somewhere in your house. And then you find a specialist to remedy that. If you do find mold, don't ever fucking use Clorox or bleach. That doesn't work. You don't kill it. You wipe it away, it looks clean, but it's still there microscopically. You want to use a vinegar to wipe away because vinegar will penetrate through the membrane and kill the mold producing spores that breathe out the mycotoxins that you breathe in and get you sick, right? So you want to kill that so it stops living. Use vinegar. Vinegar is awesome. It's amazing. It's a very godly thing because bleach can do that job. And if someone came to your house and did bleach, go back to where they remediated or took care of it and use vinegar just for precaution and to be safe. Water pipe leaks, of course, it'll be in colder, damper areas. Find the pipe leaks, fix it. There's usually mold around there or in the drywall. Take it out, replace it, do what you can for it. Dirty, moist filters. So for some people's AC units, they could have a leak on the top and you have that inside, right? You have that, what do you call that? The filter? You have one on the outside usually. People always change that one, but they always forget about the one inside, right? You got to change the one inside. Because if that one is having a drip somewhere, it's usually cold in there because the whole point of the AC is to get cold, right? You could be forming mold and you're breathing it in through the vents. And of course, you're getting sick. That happened to me and I fixed it and I felt so much better. And, it's a bad experience. But I learned from that and now I can share it with you, right? That's the beauty of living and having experiences that I can now give you this knowledge that affected me and you can do something about it and check your vents and hopefully not have that problem I had. And if you do, nip it in the bud, take care of it and you will get better. So condensation from AC units, maybe the smaller units, that could be a problem. Poorly ventilated areas, again, like a shower room or a place full of moisture or, maybe use a humidifier. You need a dehumidifier to get rid of all that excess moisture because it could be forming in the walls, in porous materials, and it's not a good thing. Again, if you had a flood and it damaged the entire bottom part of your house, get that checked, get that fixed, because that could be also the problem of your sickness. Even in AC units, right? There could be like a dirty old damp paper towel or something in there, right? Sometimes people leave shit in there for some reason. I don't know why, but I've had people say they've been in office buildings and they've checked it, and that was the case for them. So again, it can also be your work environment. Food, right? Grains, right? Cereals, nuts, seeds, dried spices aren't fresh, and coffee grinds. A lot of them could have mold. And I always tell people, coffee grinds, go get a coffee that checks for mold, like Bulletproof Coffee. I think there's other brands out there too. They check for mold, right? Dried spices, don't do dry spices. They suck. They're full of carotenoids. They're full of secondary plant compounds, and yeah, extras don't do spices. And also from India, I'll talk about later, right? But to make more money, right? They're putting this lead in there so it's heavier, which basically suck. Nuts and seeds are usually pretty old. Again, right? Do all this fresh. If it's fresh, you're less likely to experience this. Then you have, corn, which gets that mold. You have nuts that can get that mold. Some houses, for whichever reasons, old, dilapidated, they get this mold. There are different colors. If you have a mold, right, you could take a picture of it, ChatGPT it, and it'll tell you what kind of mold it is. So you know what you have, more or less. You can deal with it. So as always, get tested today. Go here. I got a link. You don't have to buy from me. You could buy for someone else. I mean, the whole point is it's educational. If you want me to help you because you like me, you think I'm cool, then yeah, I'll be your guy, right? But yeah, we have a mycotox test from Mosaic and organic acid test. Usually they're done together because mycotox tells you what kind of mold you have, and in your gut, there's certain organic acids that are produced, like mycophenolic acid, and that's detected. So these are often done together to give you more insight on what could be done and how to fix it. So again, heavy metals, all sorts of stuff, right? But yeah, please like, subscribe, share. This is to help you. This is the first part of the series, and I want you to understand mold could be a factor as to why you're not happy, why you're not healthy, despite doing all these things that are healthy. So thank you. Leave a comment. Have a blessed day. And yeah, leave a comment because I want to help you guys. All right. Take it easy.